It will not amplify, but it will record. And it's 3 minutes. I'm sorry, it's 3 minutes.
Somebody timing?
I'm going to try. Okay.
Thank you. That's better. Thank you. Mayor Shepherd, council members, I'm Shani Kleinhaus with Santa Clara Valley Audubon Society and also a resident of Palo Alto. And I'm here about sort of two things. One is the eradication of squirrels at Bixby Park that is taking place this week. And staff has communicated to us as they were starting this. We brought people to explain to staff that it's not the only way to deal with squirrels. We brought the biologist and the landfill manager from Shoreline. I've been studying other places and how they deal with the squirrel issues since then. Berkeley has put eradication on hold while they're studying the issue, and I'm asking you all to stop the eradication of the squirrels. And the reason is that squirrels are the base of the food chain in our baylands. All the raptors, a lot of the other birds, and a lot of the other animals, like foxes, depend on the squirrels. And if the squirrels are gone, we're really decimating our food chain in the baylands. And so it's really important to try and keep them, or at least some of them, not all of them. You got a letter today from the Peninsula Humane Society and SPCA on this issue. You'll probably get one tomorrow from Santa Clara Valley Audubon Society and the Sierra Club. So we're asking you to take action and just put it on hold until further investigation and further communication is taking place. And I also wanted to say that if indeed all of Bixby Park has to be rodent-less, that means that the 3.8 acres that are not filled become critical, where you can still have some wildlife in Bixby Park on regular habitat that is not impacted. And so as this is moving on, our organization has renewed strongly our position to putting the compost facility right on top of the remaining 3.8 acres that are not filled. And so to us, it would be better to actually push and remove some of the landfill and retain, that might be me, I don't know, and retain the wildlife habitat and not interfere with it. Don't put the compost on top of the wildlife habitat. I will not be here on Monday when they discuss it, so I thought I'll express this today. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to our interviews.
I think it was her.
I think it's David.
Oh, okay.
David stepped out of the room. It might be David. Okay, moving on to our commission interviews. We have Planning and Transportation Commission interviews, and every interviewee has 15 minutes. Say Ready is our first interview, and welcome. And would you like to come and have a seat here? And we usually open with a few minutes of introduction by yourself, and then we will move into question and answers, questions and comments by colleagues.
You want me to sit down here?
Yes, please. So welcome.
Thank you.
Would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, ladies and gentlemen. This is a privilege to be here. I feel so lucky to be part of Palo Alto. I have been here working for 3 years, almost 3 years, 2.5 years. I worked at VMware as a consultant. I came from Southern California. I've been a resident of California since Jerry Brown was the governor in 1977. I lived in LA. For job security, I worked in the defense industry support, typically on high-tech work. Started with the Aerojet that built ammunition for the Gatling gun, 30mm rounds of ammunition. We started that program, and we built, not proud of it, but those were used in all the Gulf Wars and all that. Then I moved on to Boeing Computer Service in LA, software business. That's where I started my software work. About a year later, they asked me to move to Seattle, and I was living in Manhattan Beach, and my choice was a little easier. So I just moved down to Northrop Grumman and worked on the MX guidance system for the MX missile. And Thank God Reagan signed the agreement that we don't need the missiles, so all the work we did never got used, so that was a good thing for all of us. Then I moved on to Hughes. I just happened to see the advertisement work, and Hughes was always considered to be the top-notch tier one company in LA. Hughes Electronics and Hughes Space and Com. So I got lucky and worked for Hughes Space and Communications that built satellites, geosynchronous satellites. The competition is L'Oreal here. So I worked there for about 12 years in supporting the satellite manufacturing and services business, which was, we started the DirecTV business. And I'm happy to say that there was one thing I did was that I helped them select the PeopleSoft HRM system. I was in love with Northern California, but never could afford to come here because of the cost and the uncertainty of the job market, where you're pushed every 2 years to look for a new job. You don't perform. So I had children. I was a single parent. So I worked out well. I was very successful, and then that company I worked on mergers and acquisitions, 3 mergers for $3 billion mergers. So one was Pan Amsat, that became it's part of the satellite consortium that everybody uses for all the communications of the worldwide television and everything. And I was lucky enough to work on the Boeing Hughes. Dr. Perry Hughes wanted to sell the businesses that they had, and they wanted to disperse everything. One part of it went to Raytheon, another part of it went to Boeing at the request of Dr. Perry. He said, it's a national asset. We don't want to have somebody else to grab it. And so I was part of the M&A acquisition. It's a $3 billion acquisition. And I was there at Boeing for 10 more years. And my time is out.
We'd like to have questions, but go ahead.
So I finished my career in 2010. It was not my choosing. I had a very good retirement plan. My executive was set aside. He was an Indian, and he didn't get picked to be CIO, so I had to go along with the flow. And I left Boeing, retired, and then came here. And luckily, I enjoyed my retirement and money and all that, but I was not ready to retire. So VMware wanted a consultant to work on M&A, so I've been working there since January 2012 to 2013. So I have a wonderful life, and in the year and a half that I stayed home and had the money to enjoy, I looked for all over the place, all over the world to retire. I felt like Palo Alto is the best place to retire. Although my daughter went to Berkeley, she refused to come into the campus. We have that problem every year. She's in tech and all that. So it's a great place, and I wanted to be a volunteer and start contributing. I have some free time.
Great. And we'll go into a period of interview with you now, if that's okay. And so do we have colleagues that would like to kick this off? Councilmember Schmidt?
You mentioned as one of the issues that you're concerned on, density. But you don't describe, can you spend just a minute talking about what you see as the downside and the upside of density in Palo Alto?
Well, I think there's always this issue of people wanting to come into a physical city like Palo Alto. There's cost prohibition. They want lower per condo unit or a house unit, but you cannot. It's a capital society. You cannot bring prices down, or you have rent control or price control. So you always have this give and take. How much industry do we want in this town? How many units do we need for people to live comfortably so they don't have to drive 40, 50 miles? I've seen people as far as Tracy to come here. So I think it is going to raise sooner or later. It is okay today, and there is, there's a little bit of not so many jobs, but when the jobs come and the industries want to build businesses here, more employment is going to come to this area. And I already see that where I live in College Terrace, right there is 60 startups. Any of them, one of them could explode. And they want to build, they want 1,000 people within 2 years, and how are we going to accommodate them, and what the reasonableness for accommodating them? I think these are all the issues that I see. Not issues, opportunities for us to think how to solve it.
Good, thank you.
Vice Mayor?
Well, we're delighted that you applied. And I noticed that the way you applied is you went up and you talked to the city clerk. And that's very much how we hoped that this would happen. So at this point, you are, it looks to me like you live in College Terrace, correct?
Yes.
And one of the issues in College Terrace has been the parking, has also been a variety of other issues with crowding. And you have a residential parking, yes.
Two.
No, but I mean, you have that within that area. What do you think about that? It's one of the areas that we're looking at very carefully.
I think it's wonderful. You know, I'm so delighted because comparing to my daughter who has a property in Cow Hollow and Pacific Heights, it's always, she bought a place but she didn't have a parking space outside. So it's a big hassle at night time. You come and you drive around 6, 7 times. But here, you know, I came here. I was lucky enough to, I live in a back unit, I'm a renter, I have a small 2-bedroom, my owner has a little space in the back, I can park it, but when I needed 2 spaces, when my daughter was going to Switzerland, so I needed a place, and came down, and I had a little argument, but they accommodated me, and I have 2 parking spaces, you know, where they won't give me a ticket if I pay. You know, College Terrace is phenomenally a representation of the U.S. You got homeowners, you got professors, big houses, you got renters, you got homeowners, you got monthly dwellings. So all these things need to be accommodated. I don't see, I have never encountered any parking issue with it, but I'm sure you're talking about things that I don't know. So there's, you know, part of College Terrace I don't know about, but there is some density closer towards.
You answered my question, thank you. It works for you and you'd recommend it.
Oh, it works fine. You know, I'm absolutely delighted. You know, I live in a huge city, big city, and I come home with peace. I never have to worry about it. Okay.
Councilmember Klein?
Well, thank you for your recitation of your career, and it sounds like you've moved in some very interesting places.
Thank you.
And drawing on that experience, what's your feeling now that you've been here a while about the interaction between Stanford and Palo Alto?
I think it's what I hear. I haven't been able to get close to it. But 2 observations is that I know the interaction in Irvine. I lived in Irvine 20 years. That isn't very good. The city, Irvine and the UCI don't get along. You know, so you see that. You know, you see that in the city and you see that in the campus. So what is happening with that is you lose. Both are losing. You know, right? They could build a huge campus. It's just as good as here, 4 miles to the beach and all that. But here I see that I've talked to a few people, and they say that the city, you know, the government and the society here in the Palo Alto and Stanford get along well. And I have no presence in, you know, I've not seen it, but that needs to be there, right? You got a 10,000 acres campus with huge high popularity, and you know, they need to serve the community and the world. Here is a city that needs to make sure that we do what we need to do for our citizens. So I think it's a balancing act, and we're able to resolve it by consensus. It's a good thing. If we don't, then you know, it needs to be figured out. And my impression is that it's very amiable. I'm still learning English, you know, sometimes.
We have time for another question. Anybody? Okay. Would you like to just do a quick summary of any points that maybe we didn't cover in questions that you'd like us to know?
Yeah, I did have a presentation. I just ran out of time to print it and all that. But so what I would like to do is I would like to offer my experience. My experience is in project management, engineering project management, planning ahead. So I'd like to see if we don't already have a playbook of what we're going to do, how we're going to do this work. I'm sure a lot of smart people have already been in these jobs. So it isn't something that I'm inventing. You know, I would like to add to that. You know, what I call a 2020 plan. Boeing does that. You know, Boeing always has a 2020 plan or a 2040 plan. We also would like probably some plan of what is that the city wants us to do. Planning commission or a transportation commission doesn't act alone, right? there has to be some guidance. And the guidance comes from the elections. You know, it's a public company. I mean, it's a public service organization. So I like to see some of that. I haven't had an opportunity to see.
Okay.
So, that's one thing I like
Thank you.
learn from all of that. And so I want to bring in my planning experience in managing projects for 2-3 years, things like that,
Okay.
into this.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you for the application. We appreciate it. Our next applicant is Presmic Gardia.
Is it okay to leave my name and
Sure.
We have your application. We have your application and your,
Thank you.
yeah, I think a photocopy of your card. Thank you. Welcome. And the routine is, if you'd like to do a quick introduction and maybe reasons why you'd like to be on Plan and Transportation, then we do an interview with you, and then we can summarize it with any points that maybe we didn't cover in the interview. So if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Thank you very much. My name is Przemek Gardias. Thank you very much for having me here. I submitted the application for the Planning and Transportation Commission, partially because of my background and partially because of my interest in the municipalities. So just going to my background, you've read the application, so you're aware about this, but I am a licensed architect in the state of California. I also practiced architecture in Poland and as well as in California. One of my first jobs were with Domorackis and Dzikońskis, an office of renowned urban planners in Poland. And
We're going to position the mic so that we can hear you.
shall I repeat that?
No.
You can keep going. Just go for it.
So that was that my past background is of course serious interest in the urban planning and the activities in Palo Alto. And also back then, when I had this job with Roman Dzikoński, we discussed the definition of the municipality. And then back then, he defined municipality, city, as the place of the highest human interaction. Today, this is questioned with the virtual exchanges like Facebook, Google, Yahoo, and others. But because there is a renewed interest of the younger generation returning to the cities that redefined the American cities on the coast, but not only in American cities, but all over the world, pretty much the cities and of course Palo Alto as well becomes the next opportunity of growth and interest and opportunities, and for us possibly for opportunities to resolve different problems. And this is another reason why I'm here.
Okay, great. Thank you. Would anybody like to start the interview? Councilmember Burt?
Good evening.
Good evening.
So aside from the
Whenever
fact that
you
you live in a great neighborhood, could you speak for a few minutes about your views on the issues of the rate of change in the community and the tensions that exist between maintaining our quality of life that we value as residents and then the changes that occur, and how much change and how would you create the right amount and the right quality of change?
Right. And that's, of course, a very hot topic around, right? So, but I've been thinking about this a lot. I don't have the answer, but I recognize the issue because on one hand, Palo Alto, like with the other adjacent municipalities, is a member of the Bay Area municipalities. I don't recall the exact name, but also that provides some guidance for the increased urbanization of this area, and some opposition of the citizens, as we recently learned from the Measure D, I believe, from the Maybelline development. And that's on the one hand. On the other hand, Palo Alto is also very hot area to live, and then has a high demand for the properties. that we would like to somehow meet. On the other hand, it's unique because of the quality of life and the community that lives here, right? So if without the community, without persons that live in my community, of course it would lose its value. So it has to be somehow maintained, and if change, then change in a measured way, because otherwise certain values may be lost that pretty much stand for this community, which are all of us, right? The hobbies that we have, that people that have some woodworking shops in their garages, their activities, their families, right? Longer they stay here, they create the value. Of course, everybody would like to share this value. For this reason, there is a demand, right? But of course, we cannot give up this value.
Okay, Karen?
Yes, thank you. Along those same lines, one of the statements you made here is continued urban development with high retention of local business community, and then it's got a dash that says zoning fragmentation for higher density. And I guess I don't really quite know what you're meaning by that, and what does local business community include?
Right. I think that there is another value in Palo Alto that may not be the same in other communities, that pretty much there is some established business that's been here around for many years. And of course, technology changes. Some businesses may go out of business, of course, because of the technology change, but we would like to retain those owners despite of rising rent. And one of the opportunities is to retain them by making sure that zoning offers plenty of availability of the floor for the businesses. And one opportunity is pretty much to allow, when possible, some fragmentation within the zoning or within the lot for either subdivision or for some occupancy that would pretty much allow those owners to thrive and allow also small businesses to develop their own properties. That's how I see it.
Thank you.
Larry?
Yes, could you talk about what drew you to Palo Alto? How come you live in here? How long you've lived here? And what projects? Give some examples of what projects you're working on now.
Right. I mean, I lived, so I've been in California since 1993. I lived for many years in Sunnyvale, and 5 years ago I moved to Palo Alto. So Sunnyvale is another place where I lived, right? 23 years in California. Currently I work as a business consultant, so I'm no longer a practicing architect, but then of course I retain very strong interest in architecture, in urban planning, and also there's another side of my life that makes this interest very strong. My wife is an architect too, and she works in Palo Alto, right? So I think that our discussions because of this over dinner are not about the business consultancy that I am in, because I am in the problem resolution, but rather about architecture and about Palo Alto problems because of our common background.
I'm going to ask you a question. And what part of Palo Alto are you attracted to the most, and why, between our sort of downtown areas?
I think that I am attracted to California Avenue area. And I think that this is because of the same reason that there is lots of development in the San Francisco, or many young people. I'm not young as they are with body, but maybe my heart follows their desires, because they recognize the charm of San Francisco, uniqueness, small businesses that thrive there. And I think that that California Avenue also has this feeling.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
And then just as an example, right? Recently we went to California for a walk with my wife, and then we noticed a development. I don't know who designed this house, but this is an example of a good development on a street parallel to California. And there was a 3 or 4 story building that was of a mixed use residential upstairs. There was a entry to the garage, and then also there was a space that for a small business.
That's the other over there on Cambridge. Yeah,
Cambridge,
with
yes.
Yeah, that's,
Yes,
that's new. Yeah.
That's new development. Yeah,
Yeah.
very good.
Yeah. Go ahead. Yeah.
Whenever. So you read the paper, I'm sure. You're an architect. Your wife is an architect. We've had a lot of discussions about the new buildings that are going up. We have a gateway building. We have a whole variety of buildings. So let's put you right on the spot. What do you think of some of the new buildings versus what we call the, the Burge Clark model? I know you know who that is by now. And comparing the old and the new. And so here's your chance to give out your opinion of the new buildings.
Right. So of course, with a respect, right, to other architects, I will not be speaking about, there are good examples and there are bad examples, but it's not about, my opinion. It's about, what can we offer to the community and how this could be accomplished either with the planning and zoning or with the Sisters Architectural Review Commission. And then there is a couple of comments that I can make about this, right? So I think that in terms of certain not successful buildings that were built recently or planned recently, I think that of course there are different ways of trying to influence for the successful design. But then there are two aspects. I think that the competition and then allowing as many entrants as possible and then allow for some maybe public projects to be open for a competition. That's one of the possibilities. The second thing is that, of course, if we're going to raise quality of a design, then, of course, a adjacent building will automatically raise its quality by de facto of being a neighbor of a higher quality building. So I think that objective should be to raise quality uniformly as much as possible, and this should automatically raise the others.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, go ahead. Okay.
Quick question.
Yeah.
Maybe not a quick question. So you mentioned that you really like California Avenue, and I can definitely understand why. And I assume you're familiar with the streetscape project that's happening there, narrowing it from 4 lanes to 2 and widening the sidewalks, that kind of thing. Do you think the streetscape project is kind of ruining a good thing or making a good thing better?
I'm not familiar to a greater detail with the project, right? I haven't studied this. I read about this, right? But I haven't seen the drawings. But I think that I will answer like this. I will not talk about California, but there is a greater aspect that Planning and Transportation Commission may accomplish by advising to the council is pretty much aspects of the walkability that of course it's near and dear to hearts of most of the population in Palo Alto or on the peninsula. So that's number one. And also the second topic is parkability, right? So those two things are interconnected. The second thing, of course, is parkability. Is going to talk about the business, how to lure the business, how to make them successful by pretty much bringing the shoppers from the other areas, allowing for the easy entrance and exit, right? So in this, if you put in this context the project on California, right? Those should be somehow reconsidered in general, right? If we're going to address some parking aspects around the city in context of bringing shoppers, making sure that there's many walking people on the streets, that there's many money spenders, that will make businesses successful, that will make streets live. And will increase this what I talked at the beginning about the element of the interaction, human interaction that creates innovation, makes city attractive.
Great. Thank you.
Karen, did you want to do a follow-up?
Just a quick follow-up here. I hope it's fairly quick. I gather from your comments that you think there are some recent projects that are successful and some that aren't successful. So the ones that aren't successful, and I appreciate your discretion on not naming them, but the ones that aren't successful, why do you think they aren't?
So I briefly, let me think about this, if I can just provide some comment that I didn't mention before. I spoke about the quality, right? But we already talked about this, right? If you build a good example of a building, then somebody else will be ashamed just to put something that will not be as of a good quality as its neighbor, right? So that's number one. Number two is, I think that there is some sort of element of education of the owners, and probably allowing also for a greater competition that within the smaller city blocks, to either subdivide those lots or somehow allow for the growth of the city to look at to look at the city blocks or at each building with a greater detail that we look today. Because California Avenue and that development that we spoke about is so successful because when you look at this, you see that each detail was thought through from the perspective of a very close proximity, and was understood there is a niche where people can stand behind. There are flowers that are growing in the pot that is the size of a letter 11 by 8. So pretty much maybe greater attention to a detail, not a rapid success, would make them more successful.
Thank you very much. Right. All right. Well, that gets us to our time, and if there's anything we didn't cover, I'll just give you a minute to quickly take us through that.
I don't have. I just want to come back to this because I thought that maybe when I was talking about this, I don't have a recipe about this because, of course, it's a topic itself, right? But I will think about this because of course, I know that this is the question that probably nurtures lots of us, right? And so. Feel free to contact me. Yes, of course.
Okay. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for the application.
Thanks for coming.
Our next applicant is Eric Rosenblum.
Somebody else.
Yeah, that's not this one yet. Later. We can pass it around.
Yeah, why don't I just...
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thank
Well,
you.
welcome, Eric.
That helps. I did.
This is the kind of guy.
And then if you'd like to just do a quick introduction.
Sure.
And let us know about your interest in the commission, and then we'd like to do interview questions.
Okay. So first, thank you, everyone, for the time and for driving this process. As you know, my name is Eric Rosenblum. I've been a resident of downtown North. I've been in Palo Alto since 2007. I have 2 kids, one at Addison and one at Jordan. I started getting involved in planning issues from late last year, and really it was in reaction to a lot of the discussion in my neighborhood, which is often a flashpoint for discussions around parking, livability, expansion, et cetera. So I became part of that conversation. And what I noticed was, at least within my neighborhood, an emphasis on single points of discussion, which are frankly often parking and safety. And it got me thinking about more systematic issues. So relationship between transportation, parking, jobs, housing, et cetera, and started wanting to learn more about it. So I started coming to city council meetings and found, many people come from a single point of view, be it pro this or pro that. And I personally often try to view problems from a variety of perspectives, and thought that this would be an area that could be useful for someone like me to get involved in. I found Monday's council session really useful, and it brought up what I think Councilmember Schmid expressed as it's really all about density versus livability, and that it is accepted that there is a model for sustainable development that is perhaps more dense in transportation corridors. The only question is how much, how, where there's a lot of big questions. And I think this is the core issue that the PTC gets to work on. I think it's an important issue. It affects almost everything. So it's something that I think I can bring some talent to. So just quickly about myself. I came from a management consulting background originally, but then went into entrepreneurship for many years. So I led a number of companies, and then eventually ended up here with Google as a director of their strategy team. I'm now back in another startup after 4 years with Google. I came from a very international background. I was raised first in rural Ohio, went to school on the East Coast, and then went off to China, where I spent basically the next 15 years. Came back to the area. And I also believe that I'm someone who can work with a variety of people. I can work with residents, developers, analysts, et cetera, and so have a broad range of interests and skills. So anyway, I appreciate taking the time.
Great. Thank you. Councilmember Scharf?
So I was really interested in your comment about data-driven problem-solving, consensus building. I was curious as to what kind of data you thought we could gather and what would your approach be?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. There actually seems to be a lot of data as it is. So it's not that I actually find Palo Alto City Council meetings to be fairly data rich and fairly open. And so for all the comments about we need more data, we need to be more open and transparent, there's already a fair degree of data and transparency normally to me. However, specifically, a lot of problems that are discussed have to do with issues of transportation, i.e., traffic's getting worse and worse, parking's getting worse and worse, and safety, i.e., my kids can't bike anymore, it's going to be terrible, or overcrowding of schools, a degradation of the school environment. For example, Eric Filseth got up and made several points the other day. He said, first, this is on Monday, he said, there are other places like LA County that's had tremendous growth, but Santa Monica has had very little growth. And second, in Palo Alto Public School, in Palo, where I have 2 kids, I have a class with 40 kids in it. And these are both comments that could be aided by data. So it was pointed out that Santa Monica is 10,000 people per square mile, and Palo Alto is 2,600 per square mile. And you can add, double for open space, and you're still nowhere near that. And which wasn't challenged, but the fact that he has 40 kids in a class in Pali isn't necessarily a result of density. The relationship between those two things is not necessarily there. And so my point is, the kind of data that we could be gathering more of is specific to parking, transit, safety, and schools, and the relationship between when you put in a major development, by development type, what is the likelihood they'll have school-age kids? What is the likelihood they'll be going to school here? When you put in a development that's closer to transit, how many cars now need to be parked? When it's farther from transit, what happens? You made a point at a meeting recently that said, well, if this is rental property, is it more likely they'll want to live close to the place of work, therefore reducing the need for cars and parking? And I think these are the sorts of questions. We have a lot of data about the total numbers of people, but it's about the question of, for every quarter mile away from a transit stop, what happens when you put in a rental focused unit versus a purchase focused unit? What are the differences? So it's that kind of data that then overflows into these decisions, I think, is important.
Councilmember Schmidt.
Enjoyed your comments on data. I think any public process should start with good data. But you have a statement in here where you talk about specifics that you're interested in, elements of a TDM,
Yes.
a downtown RPP,
Yes.
combined with a cap,
Yes.
downtown cap. Now, those are 3 things. You don't mention housing and how growth, density, trade off these issues of new downtown commercial space and a cap with housing. How do you connect?
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I actually went back through my application. I said, that probably is a miss. But what I meant by that is, again, I'm seeing this through a lens of a downtown north where a lot of consternation about pressure on our neighborhood from development that's perceived as bringing this problem to us. And that led to thinking about, well, is there a better math? And so the math that was being proposed was residential parking permit program combined with perhaps construction of more parking garages and shuttle lots, et cetera. And so I took out a spreadsheet, and this is what I do, and tried to figure out how many parking spaces would actually be needed to make an effect on this problem, how much would that cost. And so I started thinking, you know, the math isn't adding up to me around how much it would cost to actually park all the cars that Nielsen's counted versus what the perceived need might be. And so I started learning more about TDM programs and how they've been implemented elsewhere. So the relationship between residential, commercial, and transit to me does maybe need a new approach that is data-driven, and all of you know this, and know the math, and know the data. But I don't think a lot of residents do. And it was when I was sitting again with my neighbor Nielsen and going through the spreadsheet, and he said, actually, this is quite interesting. We probably would not solve our problem with just more parking lots. Something like this has to work. Otherwise, we're in an unsustainable situation. So, you know, I thank you for calling that out. But the relationship between residential and my application is around, I find that residential problems are often equivalent to problems around transit and safety, which are brought on by commercial development, or at least the perception is that they are.
Larry, would you like?
Well, Eric, you've raised lots of interesting things, but rather than trying to discuss those, my question is to you is, given the fact that you've lived in a variety of places, including a society that has top-down planning to the nth degree, what lessons have you gotten from the various places you lived that would be helpful or applicable to Palo Alto?
So it's actually, you'd be surprised. So a place like Beijing, which you'd think is top down, so center of the government, everyone has their own special interest, and so development is just willy-nilly, and it is not a well-planned, centrally planned city. There are places that are centrally planned and well-planned, but that is not one of them. So a couple lessons. So one is, you can never build enough roads. You can never build enough parking. They will always fill up. And you know, this is well understood, but when you live in a place like Beijing, it comes home pretty strongly. Places where they thought about this, you know, China used to be a place of bicyclists. And I could get across town on my bicycle much faster than I could get 7 blocks to work in my car after being there for 10 years. So one thing that I had learned is that in places that are well-planned, and I would put Hong Kong as an incredibly well-planned place, there is an intersection between people's, again, residence, work, and transit. Every MTR station hosts probably the most expensive and densest building in town. And so the MTR is the subway system. And the most expensive building in town hosts the Airport Express. People value being near a source of fast, cheap transportation. Secondly, you can't undermine people's quality of life. And people's quality of life, I believe, is enhanced by smart density. So the ability to walk to a good restaurant, to pick up your dry cleaning from down the street. These are enhancing. And so that's the second lesson I've learned from living in a well-planned place, that they think about the use cases where density enhances and doesn't just bring more congestion and lack of safety.
Karen?
Yes, you've mentioned other people that have come to council meetings. You've obviously been watching and such. You came, and pardon me if I'm incorrect, I believe you came a couple of weeks ago, or 3 weeks ago maybe, and spoke in support of the Planning Commission's recommendations for the California Avenue Concept Plan. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So one of the things that we've talked about, at least a little bit on that, is the 2.0 FAR that had come forward for the Fry site, for instance. How do you feel about that 2.0 FAR?
Yeah, that's a good question. I have to say my comments to them were fairly specific around, I think, Fry's, when we think, it was specific to the Fry site, which was around if there is a place to put a higher density residential development or mixed-use development, that seems to be fairly ideal, particularly what's going on with the rest of the CalAV plan, to have merchants that need, that need support from a local community that could get there through either their feet, walking, on bikes, etc. About 2.0, I don't know, to be honest. I don't think I'm well enough educated, and I think I have to understand more about what that means. So the total numbers of people, what it actually looks like, what pressure does that create? And so this gets back to, I think, a previous answer. I don't think I'm well enough educated yet on the specifics of when you get to 2.0 FAR, what pressure that puts on other parts of the system. So I know that sounds evasive, but I think it's the only answer I could give. Yeah.
And then this will be our last question.
You mentioned some of the value of residing or working near services. So as we have higher and higher value to our properties, commercial properties in these downtown areas, we see a lot of the services that are really local serving, not 20 nail shops or the high-end restaurants, but the local services that you described being squeezed out.
Yeah.
Any thoughts on what might be appropriate to try to, whether it is appropriate to try to retain those services, and if so, how?
I do think it's appropriate. I think that, again, in a well-planned community or a vibrant community, you have a variety of businesses, you have a variety of kinds of people, you have a diversity of business types, you have a diversity of office types, and so I think that's important. I don't want to live in a community with nail salons and high-end restaurants, or at least it's not my choice. With regards to how to do it, I think that there are policies where certain kinds of businesses could potentially be given leases at a rate that is suitable for their kinds of business. But I think ultimately it's a supply and demand problem. And I think these kinds of fixes where you put your thumb on the scale for certain sorts of businesses can be very difficult. Because ultimately become the arbiter of, is this dry cleaner really the best use of this space versus others? And I think you tie yourself in knots. So ultimately, again, I think it is around, and people have mentioned we have not yet hit the cap, putting enough office space so they're not squeezing out these ground floor businesses. I keep hearing from my other friends who are also entrepreneurs about the difficulty of getting office space in Palo Alto, which leads them to all kinds of convoluted schemes to try to get hold of, a place that may not have been built for them. They'd be very happy to be in a standard office tower. The reason they want to be here is to recruit good people from Stanford. The closer they get to Stanford, the happier they are. And so to me, it's an issue of supply and demand. The insatiable appetite is there for office space. I think having office space in the right place will open up the space for these local businesses that are getting squeezed out.
Thank you. If you want to just do a quick closing comment.
No, in closing,
no,
I don't really need to, except to thank all of you. I think it's a hard job, and thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for making an attempt to meet with us.
It's fun seeing your face in the audience, too, actually. It's nice to have people invested in getting contemporary with things that are on our docket, so thank you. Our next applicant is Brian Hamachek. Welcome, Brian, and you've given us a resume.
Yes.
And if you don't know the routine, just a quick introduction of yourself, and then we would like to interview you.
Yeah. So I'm Brian. I was born at Stanford Hospital. I grew up in Palo Alto. I went to Walter Hayes and then Jordan, Palo Alto High School.
I know your parents.
You're a local kid.
and I simply love this town.
Say I know your older brother.
No, sadly.
And I simply love this town. It's just great. After high school, I went to UC Santa Barbara. It's the only time really I've left here. And then I came straight back, studied computer science. Then I got involved with startups. Worked for a number of startups. I also worked for Microsoft, so in Mountain View. So kind of have worked with larger and smaller companies. Currently, I'm the founder and CEO of my own startup based in Palo Alto. So technology is definitely my background. About 4 or 5 years ago, I sent an email to the city council about what I saw happening on Embarcadero by Palo Alto High School, the new development there. And I expected not to get any response. I expected it to just kind of go somewhere and maybe one person would read it, but I actually got this extremely detailed response responding to each of my concerns, and that's what got me involved in the whole planning and transportation committee aspect of the city. That's when I looked into the master plan, I looked into Stanford's master plan, and I really saw everything from a different perspective, and I realized that, you know, myself, my friends, and my friends' parents don't really know the whole story. And once you know the whole story, it's actually much more interesting and things make a lot more sense. So that's when I started. Every time I'd see a new development, I start to look into those facts. So I saw the opening for this position, and I thought I'd like to, you know, get involved on a more active level. So that's why I applied.
Great, thank you. But Karen, why don't you go ahead and start this off?
So thank you for your application, Brian. I don't know your parents. I don't even know your older brother. I know your younger brother. So one of your comments here is, it's the one about if you were appointed, and it says that you would like to preserve the unique character of Palo Alto while still implementing necessary and desirable changes in thoughtful ways. It's a nice-sounding sentence, but I really don't know what it means. So if you're going to say the unique character of Palo Alto, what is the unique character of Palo Alto?
I mean,
and how and what does implementing necessary and desirable changes in thoughtful ways? What does that mean?
Okay, yeah, I think the unique characteristics of Palo Alto, I can sum that up by just saying, you know, Gamble Gardens, the Baylands, California Avenue. I mean, those are aspects of this city that I don't think any other city has, and just combined really makes Palo Alto what it is. And those are the kind of things that I don't want to see changed. I mean, I also don't want to see Cho's close on California Avenue, but some changes are going to be necessary. Whether or not that specific one is debatable, but you know, things are going to change. You know, the nature of the type of businesses that are in Palo Alto changes. So I guess those are kind of the necessary changes that I am talking about. And those are the unique characteristics.
Can you be a little more specific? Like what kind of change, and what do you mean by different kinds of businesses?
I mean, I think that the population is going to grow at least around us, and we can try to, you know, keep that from affecting the city too much. But we're going to have to make you know, space for more residents in some ways, and try to, you know, follow the master plan and just keep that to increasing density around transit centers. And that's the kind of thoughtful ways of dealing with that change that I'm talking about.
Mark?
Thank you for applying, Brian. You'd mentioned you think that a creative use of technology can help to accomplish some of kind of what you were just talking about. Do you have any kind of specific thoughts or you know, different areas where technology might be able to help us in terms of managing the change that is inevitably going to occur in Palo Alto?
Yeah, definitely. I think that, you know, data-driven kind of analytics is a part of that, like was already spoken about, but also just using things like, you know, parking applications, maybe a city-wide parking application to help people find parking, maybe some kind of paid parking where you pay using a cell phone and your credit card, just ways to kind of utilize newer technologies to combat things like parking and maybe even traffic flow, you know, integrating deeper with Google, you know, with the shuttle service, things along those lines.
Good. Thanks.
Greg?
Yeah, I wanted to ask you, you said you were particularly invested in California Avenue development plan, for instance. So I wanted to get your thoughts on the development plan, what you think about it, and also what you think about the streetscape improvement plan.
Yeah, I think that the California Avenue plan is awesome. I think that, you know, having 4 lanes there was completely unnecessary, and you know, utilizing that for, you know, more walking space, because that's what people do there. They walk. If you've ever been there on a Sunday morning, you can see that you know, those sidewalks are way too small right now, and there's so much foot traffic. So I think that, and there was kind of an overall feel of, I mean, California Avenue's always been great, and I've always loved it. But, you know, bringing it up, making it a little bit more modern, a little bit more attractive, but at the same time not changing its core character. I think it's a great plan.
All right, thanks.
Larry?
Well, if we play that old game with, we give you not 2 wishes, but 1 wish. What would you use that 1 wish? What policy of the city of Palo Alto would you change if you had that 1 wish to do it?
Oof. I mean, that.
That's right.
I mean, I really like the city. I mean, I don't know if there's anything that strikes me as something that needs to be changed at the moment. I really like how it is. It's really more keeping things on track. But I mean, if it's just like a magical wish and anything could change, obviously, the traffic is outrageous. I mean, I guess if it was just policy, okay. I think that the master plan is a really, thoughtful, well thought out document, and really, I think the policies outlined there, I agree with. So,
Greg Schmid?
Yeah, one of the earlier candidates said one of his first lessons were the city is the place of highest human interaction. He said, oh, that's challenged by modern technology, and I see that you have a company called Nearby, which substitutes other ways of getting together. Given that tension between physical interaction and the new technology, what are the advantages, or what do you look for that a place like Palo Alto can do to enhance physical interactions with people?
yeah, I think that one thing that could be done, something that I've thought about doing myself, is just I'm an avid tennis player myself, and coming up with some sort of a website to kind of facilitate people meeting other tennis players at Palo Alto would be a way that technology could really kind of supplement and help continue the city being the focal point for human interaction. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it's a good
Pat?
So, from your long history in the city, you've seen certain changes occur over time. You mentioned concern over traffic, and yet you also, I didn't get you said a number of things that made me feel that you don't feel like Palo Alto has been destroyed from the Palo Alto of your youth. What sort of right direction, wrong direction aspects do you see going on currently in Palo Alto?
I think that a lot of things are going in the right direction. Town and Country Village has really kind of changed just in, they remodeled, and then a lot of the stores there was a lot of turnover. But overall, I think that at the end of the day, it's actually a nicer, more pleasant place to visit, even if the traffic has gotten a little bit worse there. But the parking's probably gotten a little bit easier there. So, in terms of downtown, I think downtown has really changed a lot since I was a kid. But overall, I think that I prefer that now too. Actually, I mean, I like the restaurants that are there. I like the overall atmosphere. I like the trees are lit up now while you're around. I mean, I really like those aspects of it. So, I guess if I had to come up with something which was a little bit not so great, well, maybe the development in San Antonio. But I think that in given time, I think the rest of that area is going to also get built up, and then it won't look quite so out of place. So
Mountain View development?
Yeah, it's not ours.
Oh, is that
Mountain
Mountain
View?
View?
Yeah.
Oh, well, good.
Oh,
really?
That one?
We can give you the
Perfect.
names of some
Yeah.
Mountain View
Did you want to do a quickie?
Let me just do the density question. You've heard a number of us talk about density as being the big nut. We've grown a great deal in the last 10 years, enormously. Think we should keep growing? Want to stay where we are? We're at about 67,000.
I mean,
Want to get some more houses in close to transit? What would you like to do?
I mean, personally, I think that we're at a great size, but that's just not really a realistic answer. I don't think. I mean, the population of the city doubles during the workday, and that just doesn't make sense to not allow some people to be able to live closer. So I think that there's going to have to be some greater density, and hopefully that can just be planned well thought out and put into places like the transport corridors, and hopefully do it in a way where it can minimize the impact to the city, but also allow for those goals to be reached.
So don't close all the gates at night.
Oh, if we could. No.
Thanks.
Well, Brian, I'm not going to ask you a question because I used to volunteer with your parents, but they're wonderful, and I really did appreciate your comment. You get invested and really look at what's going on. It does make sense, much more so than being less informed. So it's quite interesting to see how the city works. So thank you very much for making the application. It's wonderful to have you here. And do you have anything in closing that maybe we didn't cover that you would like to say?
No, I guess just thanks for your time, and best of luck with your search. I'm sure you'll pick the best people to continue to make Palo Alto great. So thanks.
Thank you. Now we have a little break, between now and our next applicant at 7:15, unless Frida is here.
Wasn't able to reach Frida.
Okay.
Christine's going to come in earlier.
Okay.
Here yet, and then Jim will try to get back earlier.
Okay, so,
Better job.
no, you did fine. There's
at all.
nothing that you
Not
did
at all.
wrong. No.
A couple of us would have to make an escape anyway,
Yeah.
so.
There we
Do
go.
we still have enough? 1, 2,
I'll be here.
4, 5. So everybody.
Where else would I be?
Everybody else has to be here. So nobody. Oh no, we have one extra person. So.
Who are we losing?
Liz and Larry.
Okay.
My granddaughter asked me to help her.
Okay. So first of all, Commissioners, thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. Just briefly by way of background, I'm from the East Coast. Educational-wise, I hold an MBA from Suffolk University from Boston, as well as a master's in real estate from New York University. Currently, I manage San Mateo County's real estate portfolio, and that consists of infrastructure that obviously services the public domain. So it's airports, libraries, parks, and other recreational facilities, as well as lease space where the county is able to provide its valuable services to the community. Prior to joining San Mateo County, I was in New York City, and there I worked in both the public and the private sectors, which is where I hope to add value to the commission, being on both sides of the table. It's very interesting. I worked for firms such as J.P. Morgan, as well as the New York City Economic Development Corporation. My portfolio there was a little bit more expansive. It included residential, whether it be single-family homes, condos. We have cooperatives out there, which I know that you don't really have out here in Palo Alto. Multifamilies, as well as commercial, industrial space, land use, a little bit of subdivision development, as well as infrastructure development, which is all very interesting. And so, like I was saying, it's my hope that these combined experiences will add value to the commission, because I do understand the importance of, whether it be a city charter, a master plan, or your general plan, your comprehensive general plan that you have here, of adhering to it to ensure public safety, to really bring harmony amongst its residents and its commercial base. I have some experience in that when I was working in New York City. I was part of the development team that built the Brooklyn Cruise Terminal, which was a secondary port to the New York Cruise Terminal. And basically, we put the cruise industry in a part of Brooklyn, an undeveloped part of Brooklyn, which really vitalized its economic base, brought a lot of developers to the area. But there was a certain group of individuals or neighbors, it was their neighborhood, they'd grown up there, and they didn't want it to change. So, I'm very experienced in meeting with community boards, public outreach, which I think is extremely important as well. So that is why I'm here. Tried to do that fast enough for you.
Thank you. Would anybody want to kick off here? If not, I would like to. Well, thank you for applying, and I just wanted to get a little bit of information about, like, how long have you lived here, and where in Palo Alto do you kind of like it the best, and what do you like about Palo Alto and how we've kind of developed ourselves?
Sure. I've been in Palo Alto for under a year. I've been in California for under a year, so the first place I hit. And I actually live right off of University Avenue. So that, I think, would just be my favorite spot because I call it home. And one of the things that attracted me to Palo Alto versus, residing in San Mateo County or further north, obviously, is the environment. And by that, I mean, beautiful landscape. You have a diversity here in terms of your neighborhoods as well as your business districts. And I really enjoy the downtown. It really reminds me of back home, back east. And I think that you've done a great job in, compatibility uses, which is very difficult to do. You've got a dense population here, and you've got a lot of different factors. You have universities, you've got businesses, you've got residences, and then you've got some other undeveloped areas, and looking at those to develop. So there are a lot of challenges, but there's a lot of prospects ahead as well. So that was one of the reasons why I applied. I'd like to add value if I could. I'd like to raise my children here.
Looks like you will. Greg?
You talk about regulation as essential to compatibility and mixed use and harmony. And,
sure.
And that. What do you really mean about that? I mean, it seems fairly vague. Like,
sure.
What regulations? Do you think we need additional regulations? Do you have anything specific in mind?
Well, I think, with any type of community, especially one with Palo Alto where you're actively growing, and you've got people migrating here, you've got people that have been residing here, going to school here and staying here, and they want to start their businesses here, they want to start their families here. It's important, extremely important for compatibility uses, meaning, we have, University Avenue, you've got your essentially businesses right alongside of residential, and how far does that go? What requirements need to be met to ensure safety amongst the two.
Any specifics of anything that you've seen downtown or in university where you think there's an incompatible use, or do you think it's all compatible? Or?
Well, I think you all have done a great job in bringing every development that comes forward to the public's attention, because I do get all those notices in the mail and read them. As far as specifics, I would have to sit down and go through some specifics developments to give you probably the particulars that you're seeking for. Sure.
Do you have any specifics on any of that? You have a comment?
Sure. Well, the reason why I wrote about that in my application, because from my perspective, it really encompasses economic development. So you've got, the landscape and the sidewalk use that you are enhancing, as well as business development right there, and your residential uses as well. So I think it's an important project, and one I'm sure that will go very successfully.
Thank you.
Down here to the other Greg.
I'm intrigued by your experience in New York.
Oh, thank you.
I think of New York as a very dynamic metro area, especially Brooklyn, which is going through a transformation. Yeah. Now, you mentioned that you worked on a project which brought new vitality to an area, but also traditional neighborhoods. What means can be taken to protect traditional neighborhoods when you have a substantial change agent coming in?
Well, I think public outreach from, really from a conception point, when a project is in its conceptual work, all the way through to its fruition, is extremely important. In Brooklyn, we went to schools, we held community meetings, open forums. When we brought the cruise industry in, we tried to bring in some vitality by showing, if a cruise ship comes in, we can have fairs along the streets that will help the local merchants. We met with the mayors, encouraged their support to get out and talk to people as well. So I think that the public outreach and listening to their concerns from the very outset is extremely important, because you can sit there and you can look at numbers and say, okay, this is going to benefit you economically, but people, if it's their home and where they grew up, yeah, it's important to a certain extent, but it's not the whole picture. And I think that needs to be taken into consideration, especially if you're, in the public domain.
Karen? Yes, and thank you for applying. You're the sole woman.
Oh. So far.
Paula, I'm assuming that's a woman.
She was
true.
Oh.
So,
what did that happen?
thank you for applying. But so, you've been in Palo Alto less than a year, in California less than a year.
Right.
I appreciate your enthusiasm for getting involved. What do you think that you'll be able to bring to the table in terms of knowing where Palo Alto is, what the culture is, what the community feels about things, kind of historically? Like how you've mentioned compatibility of uses. Mm. What about compatibility of the built environment? You have a lot of experience in that area. What do you think about the density that we are at now in terms of mass and scale and population, that sort of thing? So I've thrown kind of a lot of things at you, and I apologize for that.
That's okay.
So if you could jump on those.
Sure. Well, I have been in Palo Alto for under a year, so I do a lot of reading. And I do a lot of reading online, as well as try to be involved with the community as best I can. I do have a 3.5-year-old, so it makes it a little easier.
Reading her editorial.
Yeah. And she loves your parks. You're doing a great job there. So, while I hear your concern, you've only been in Palo.
I just want you to educate me.
Sure. When I moved to New York City, it was my first time in New York City as well. So I think that, everybody comes to a different place and brings with them their experiences and their knowledge. And that's what I hope to do here. So I would, welcome the opportunity to look at the density and the FAR ratios that you have within the city, and developers coming to you and asking you to increase them. Perhaps you have air rights, development rights that go along with that. Look at historically what has been done, and hopefully set precedent to keep the economic viability going, moving in a forward direction.
So the last thing here, if we could address, is like
Sure.
the physical compatibility of our development here. Do you have a concept of that, or a sort of an evaluation of that? Because again, you were speaking to compatibility of use.
Sure. Well, I do think that it's difficult, because I know that you have businesses that want to pop up all the time, and there are issues in terms of your residents sort of wanting to keep their perimeters, their own particular radius, and not to overlap the two. But in terms of businesses, it would be taken on a case-by-case basis to know where exactly they're compatible, in what area they're compatible with, and what use is already there. It should dilapidated buildings, for instance, be torn down and be used for more commercial space, or should it be, should the zoning change to that, or should it stay perhaps residential? So I would like to have the opportunity to look at a case-by-case basis on each one. Thank you.
Mark?
So this will sound like a loaded question, and it's not meant to be. But being relatively new to Palo Alto, from what you've seen from that kind of fresh perspective, what's something planning or transportation related that you would change, or an area of opportunity for making something better?
Honestly, the Caltrain. I would improve the timetables on the Caltrain.
Something that we have a little bit of control over, maybe.
I think parking obviously is an issue. Just I've run into it here, and I know that there's been sort of some discussion among how much can you build, how much garage space, this and that, who should get the parking? Should it be the commercial district, or should it be the residential district? And I think that those are all valid and really big concerns. So I would like to look more at the transportation studies that I know are currently going on to give a further evaluation of that.
Thanks.
Yeah. Pat?
Have you had a chance to familiarize yourself with our comprehensive plan and the update to it that we're working on? And if so, do you have any thoughts about the directions it should take in terms of any changes from the prior plan?
I've read it somewhat online. It is comprehensive. But I think that the proactive approach into the community that you all have started is excellent. I do understand that you've gone through substantial change since when it was first created, and probably will going forward as businesses change. I mean, perhaps in 10 years from now, the large real estate infrastructure won't be needed, and everything will move to a more online field than it is now. So that will change your comprehensive plan as well going forward. So I think that what I liked was the proactive, going out into the communities and not waiting for the community to come in here and sit at a certain time and give you their feedback, because obviously it's hard given every life in general.
Great. Well, thank you.
Okay. Thank you for your time.
Okay, and thank you for the application.
Wrap up, or?
Yeah, if you have anything that you want to tell us in a wrap-up, this is a good time to do that.
If you want to.
Yeah.
Okay.
If you don't feel like we've covered something.
Yeah, no, I first of all would like to thank you for your time. It's been a pleasure just to be here and to have the opportunity to introduce myself. I hope that I've shared enough with you that you can see, hopefully, that I would add value to the commission as well as the city as a whole. I did move my family out here under a year ago, and we wanted to make it our home, and we would really like to be part of it starting here with you all. So thank you.
Thanks.
Well, that completes our Planning and Transportation Commission interviews, and we have 2 applicants for the Palo Alto Art Commission, for the Public Art Commission. So, and David, I think we have Christine is here. Is that you, Christine? Yeah. Okay, great. Well, thank you for coming early. If you'd like to come, this is great. And this mic is, if you want to just give us a quick introduction and why you'd like to sit on the commission, and then we'd like to interview you. Okay. And if you could hold the mic, it doesn't amplify necessarily, but it does record for our video.
Hi, I'm Christine Kelly, and first of all, I'd like to thank you for inviting me to come interview for this position, and for inviting me back when I couldn't be here for the first interview session. I was on spring break with my 3 kids. So I think, as you know from my resume, I have nearly 20 years of experience as an artist. Started out my career in fine arts as a painter, and in arts administration, working in galleries and at photography studios. Then I got into doing design, kind of into tech, into web design, and that evolved into, went back to school and studied product design. I worked at IDEO for a short time, and then got into consulting on my own when I started a family. And have been teaching for the last 2 years in the art and design program at San Jose State University. So art and design are just a passion of mine, and education as well. So I feel like this is having an opportunity to work on the commission is a really nice kind of combination of all my interests and being a part of the community. I've lived in Palo Alto for 7 years now with my family, and having 3 young kids, we spend a lot of time in the parks and in the public areas and enjoying the art. And I know that it brings a lot of richness and vibrancy to the community. And it seems like a really exciting time to be involved in the Arts Commission right now with a new 1% measure that was just passed. It seems really exciting, like there'll be a lot of new opportunity. There are a lot of new RFPs out, I see, for sort of site-specific installations, which I think would be really exciting to be part of. And yeah, it just seems like an exciting time, and I would love to have the opportunity to be involved. So thank you.
Thank you. Somebody, okay, go ahead, Karen, and then Greg.
So you said you were at IDEO for a short time. And given your other broad experience, how would you see Palo Alto's approach to art being the same or different or enhanced by your being on the commission?
Well, I think that I would love to see sort of, like I said, some more site-specific installations, possibly. For example, the Los Altos and SF MoMA relationship that just sort of happened recently. I remember thinking, I spent a little bit of time in Los Altos with my kid. One of my sons does karate there. And I remember thinking, why isn't that in Palo Alto? Because it just seems like in so many ways Palo Alto is really the heart of Silicon Valley. And so I don't know. I can't promise that I could make that relationship happen, but I think that it would be interesting to see what other opportunities are out there for those kinds of partnerships and relationships with other local arts organizations, whether they're in San Francisco or San Jose has a pretty vibrant art community that I'm part of as well. So I would love to kind of be involved in that and possibly be somewhat of an ambassador for the city.
Great.
So I have a couple of questions. The first is, what kind of an artist are you? I noticed that you got a bachelor's in painting, but also in industrial design. I'm curious as to what you're doing.
So actually right now, I'm as I mentioned, I'm teaching, and I'm in the process of going back to consulting probably on a more full-time basis. But so I did start out as a painter. I was a fine artist and living in San Francisco in my 20s, and realized that it was pretty tough to make a living. And I was actually really, but more than that, it was I was really interested in the kind of more collaborative nature of working in design and being on a team and sort of problem solving. So that led me to industrial design. I went back to school and studied product design.
And then my second question is, when you look around town, what are the pieces of art that you'd like to comment on? What particularly strikes you as interesting or innovative or speaks to you?
Okay, yeah. So I mean, right outside, the Aurora, I think is just, it's fantastic. It's such a, it's, you know, not only is it just really delightful and kind of entertaining, I think, but it's also just a really contemporary piece, having come from Burning Man, and you know, it's just kind of the moment, I guess. And some of my favorites, and they're I don't know that they're necessarily city-funded projects, but there's definitely, well, I know that Andy Goldsworthy is not, but on Stanford campus there's some great pieces like the Andy Goldsworthy and, well, the Rodins, of course, but, you know, I don't know if you're familiar with Andy Goldsworthy. Who doesn't like Rodin? But that's okay. But I've always been a big fan of Andy Goldsworthy, and so having like a piece of his locally is kind of, I think, special. And there's the piece out in front of the Art Center that is a few blocks from our house, and that's one of our favorites as a family. We just spend a lot of time kind of interacting with those nests, and you know.
Talk about the steel structure.
Yeah, that's probably not one of my favorites, but yeah. And then also on the Stanford campus, there's the moments. Let's see, it's, I think, Monument to a Change as it changes. It's a Peter Wegner piece, which is kind of a more modern piece. And I see that you're having a new media. There's an RFP for a new media project here, which I think would be really interesting, because we are, again, kind of in the heart of Silicon Valley, and technology is such a big part of our everyday. So I would love to see some bridging of that, I guess.
Thanks.
Greg?
I noticed in two of your points in the application, you mentioned temporary. That struck me because not a lot of people do that. Mm-hmm. Can you talk a little bit about the Art Commission, limited budget? How do you trade-off investing in temporary versus, quote, permanent art?
Well, I don't know the financials of it, but I do think it's exciting that that I see that the commission is already doing some of that. That there are some sort of temporary site-specific installations. From what I understand, the university tunnel is going to be temporary. It's not necessarily permanent, which I think is really exciting. Also because it's that's the epicenter of, downtown, right? It's sort of where people come and go, all the commuter traffic comes in. And so I think to have that evolve over time seems really appropriate. And again, you can keep things kind of fresh and more relevant and topical to what is going on. Aurora is temporary as well, is that right? Yeah, so I guess I'm excited to see that there's a nice mix going on, and I would like to see more of that. And also, as I mentioned, the Los Altos relationship with MoMA is all sort of site-specific temporary, and I just think that adds kind of a lot of surprise and delight to the community, and it brings people out and gets people engaged. And if it's going to be there forever, you may not necessarily go right away, or I don't know. And if it's changing, it gives you a little bit of surprise. So.
Karen? I often ask this question because it's something of great interest to me. Is like, do you have any thoughts about functional art? Wayfinding, that kind of thing.
I think it would be really interesting if you could integrate the two downtown. Yeah. I had specific thoughts on it. I think it seems like an interesting opportunity to explore integrating them. And for some reason, the first thing that popped into my head when you said that was the bicycle program downtown, and sort of how that is almost like an art piece in itself. And it certainly is functional, but it really says a lot about, Palo Alto as a city and its values. And that's, I think, really interesting. So maybe there's more opportunity for that with the Arts Commission.
Great. Well, thank you.
Okay.
Do you want to, if you have any summary comments that you'd like us to know that we didn't cover? Not required, but
I think, as I mentioned in the beginning, I just think it's an exciting time to kind of be involved, and with the new funding opportunities and sort of the private-public opportunities that are coming up, and it seems like there's some interesting projects coming down the pipe at the commission, and so I would just love to be involved. So thank you for considering. Yeah, thank you
very much for applying. To get everybody in a little early. This is Jim.
Hi. Yes.
Hi. Well, thank you for coming down early.
Thanks for having me.
We hope we didn't rush you. Well, if you'd like to do just a quick introduction, and
Sure.
then we can ask questions and interview you.
That sounds good. So, hi, council members. I'm Jim Migdal, and I'm excited about the prospect of serving on the commission for a couple of reasons. I think you guys may have seen the written statement, and again, I think it's in the same position as Christine with regard to being on spring break with kids. So I think that, and it struck me as I came in, that Aurora, I walked around and I couldn't find anything. There's no plaque. I don't know who the artist is. I had no idea this has anything to do with Burning Man. I knew that personally, but I didn't see it, and I made an effort to walk around. And I think that the thing that I'm most excited about with regard to the Art Commission is something that stems in part from my upbringing. I was raised by a sculptor who made it a big point of putting her name, always, she'd worked in steel, and always having your name on the piece so you know who it is. I don't know, where did this come from? And so, and the second piece is, I think that we're at a really interesting place with regard to the evolution of mobile and mapping technologies to help people to discover stuff. I think people don't really, I think when you walk through a really well-done audio-guided tour at a museum or wherever you might be, when someone tells you that this is what the piece is about and this is why it's about, and you can see people interacting with it, it just opens your eyes to it. And I spent a little bit of time in the last month or so talking to folks that have built applications like that. There's a woman that I came from Facebook, was my last job, and there's a woman at Facebook that built an app called Art Around, and she has gone and mapped different pieces in a couple different ways they've done it. One in D.C., one in San Francisco, and one in Oakland, each with different models. And I think that we're just in a unique spot with the work that was done by one of the commissioners to get our art in the database and to now take the next step to really engage the community to help people discover what's around them. So that's why I'm here and why I'm excited about it.
Great. Well, thank you. Anybody? Greg?
Just to follow up what you said, I noticed in your work experience that there's a lot of measurement, searching, tracking, and the question I have is, you know, how can this be used? I was thinking in terms of how do you measure and track people's response to the art, not just them finding it, but you know, what do they enjoy and how can you somehow or another get a sense of what the community is getting out of this art?
So I think it's not obvious the best way to do that. I think that there's a few different ways you can do it. And I think Palo Alto should experiment with some of them. They're not that expensive to do, and you kind of try to see what works. I think if anything I learned in tech is that you try a lot of different things, and hopefully you can try and fail quickly at low expense and see what works. But in terms of, to answer your question directly, I think that in Oakland, they did a community mapping project for the art in Oakland, and they had a party, and it started at a gallery, and it ended at a gallery, and they had people go out and map the art. Because if you have an application and nobody knows that it's there, then no one's going to use it. And so I think that one of the first things I'd want to do is work with the people on the staff is to have a party to go map the art and have people go and they take pictures of it and they post it and they favorite it and they comment on it. And then you've created, in the case of Oakland, they had, I think, around 80 people that went and did that over the course of an afternoon on a Sunday. And I think that that creates your ambassadors for art that's in your community. There's lots of ways to measure it, but there's, you know, I don't know what kind of volume you could anticipate. But I think that there's some clever ways that you can engage folks at local schools and in the community to make that happen.
Greg?
So, did you grow up in Chicago?
Yes.
And they have a fantastic public art.
They do.
One of the best in the country. And then you say when you relocate from San Francisco to Palo Alto, you become a fan of some pieces here and not so much others. Since you've raised it in your country, you know, what are you a fan of, what are you not a fan of?
So I think my favorite piece is Run. Marta, is it Thomas? I think. Is, I think, a really cool piece on Alma. It's one of my favorites, and I'm a big Greg Brown fan. I've kind of been in an ongoing argument with my wife to do a piece like a Trump lawyer on the side of our house. I'm losing that one, but we'll see. I like the pieces that he's done that are around town, and I also like what's the one that is next to the? It's like one of the embarrassing things where I don't know the artist. So this is sort of a case in point. The one that's right in front of the library, the kind of nested structure.
Oh, yeah.
That is an awesome piece.
Twiggs, right.
But it's a shame that nobody knows, like, I'm sure you all know who the artist was, but
We knew.
you knew, okay.
He had a
So,
reception and.
so imagine if
Patrick Doherty. Yeah.
Patrick Doherty. Okay, so Patrick Doherty now, thanks you. But wouldn't it be cool if you're walking by or driving by and you had an app that could pop up and say, oh, this is a piece by Patrick Doherty. And then once it's popped up once, you can say, oh, I've seen this and I don't want it to pop up again. But, you know, you could save this as a favorite, for example.
So can you build us an app? Do you have that ability? Would all that stuff pop up? I mean, is that something?
There's an app that's there now, Art Around, that I actually think is pretty good. And it wouldn't be that hard to upload the database of stuff into it. And I'd personally be interested in taking that on. So, you know, if I was a member of the commission, that's one of the things that I'd want to do.
And are you still with Facebook? Or
No, I left. Yeah. I mean, I made my career at Facebook doing partnerships. So I would negotiate with different companies to try to figure out what you could do to create value for both parties. And I think that one of the things that's interesting to me in serving as like an advisor to my mom, she has pieces that are installed. She probably has 6 or 7 in Chicago, a bunch in Michigan, Minnesota, and each community has been very creative in the way they've funded stuff. There's a lot of temporary things, and there's a lot of things where we're paying for installation and insurance and shipping, but your piece is there 18 months and it's out. And I think that, you know, it's a mixed bag and that there's exposure for the artists, and that's great if it's in a place like Palo Alto where there are people that can see the art and potentially buy it. But I think you have to make it worth the artist's while so that you can actually make it possible to discover who it is and not just have it be something that you're getting art for free and the artist is, you know, not making any money.
Great. Any other questions? Well, Karen?
That question, functional art.
Functional art. Can you be more specific in your question?
I was giving you the shorthand version. Well, I mentioned wayfinding or let's say you have, we have these telecommunications things at curbs a lot of times. So something that would house those, or anything that provides guidance, or maybe it's a piece of art that's a resting place in a park.
Oh, interesting. Okay. So beyond the idea of simply being a meeting place, like in Chicago, people will say, "Meet me at the Bean," which is like the Clouds Rest piece that's in right off Michigan Avenue. I think there's a lot of things that you could do there in terms of simple things like doing little. I don't know if there's Bluetooth low energy devices that you could put on a piece that serves as a mapping function, so you know where something is. But as far as serving as something to have the sculpture serve a function, I've seen things at people's homes. I don't know that I've seen anything that's public that I'd say, other than just navigationally, like meet me at the Picasso or the Chagall or whatever it might be. I'd want to explore it, but I don't have any things off the top of mind.
Yeah, I think we did that with the ballasts over at Mitchell, where we turned them into owls.
Well, and just a couple of examples that come to my mind are signage. Our children's museum and zoo is art as a sign, and a children's library. And then we have benches at different places too.
Okay.
And then I think it was even mentioned about. I think of the. Do you know the bike arcs?
Yeah, those are
The one by the High Street Garage, which is an umbrella shape. I think that's particularly artistic and functional at the same time. So it's an interesting concept. I'm enthused about it too.
I mean, I think beautiful design products you could say that's art, and so yeah. Is that within the charter of the commission? Sort of as you think about things like, I don't know. I think the best example of that, if we're going to, I didn't realize how you were thinking about it, but like Guimard in Paris built all the beautiful subway stops in the turn of the century, and they spent a lot of money on these wrought iron structures. If we're not in the same place of budgets as Paris was at the turn of the century, but I think there are probably really cool things that you could do with signage.
Well, we probably haven't engaged some of this as much as we should, because I don't think we have asked our excuse me, our staff or our architectural review board to really work with our art commission, and maybe that's something we should think about more.
And actually, I'm engaged on the art commission now, so I've been asking the art commission to actually take the lead and even approach the ARB about being a collaborative position, even taking the lead on that kind of thing.
I mean, I think that would be really exciting. And I think that we have all of these bus stops that are all over the place, and what is it that they just have to have and add and be like just totally utilitarian. I think you could do a lot more with them that would make it more fun and people could engage with them. So.
Great.
Well, thank you. And do you have do you have any exit comments?
Other than I'm excited about it, and I think that doing partnerships and engaging in art and figuring out what you can do with tech to bring Palo Alto to a place where people could point to us as a model would be really exciting, and I have time career-wise to spend on it now and would be really fired up to do it.
Great. Well, thank you, and thank you for the application.
Thanks, guys.
They'll take care of it. We don't know what to do with it either.
It doesn't amplify, but it records.
Thank you.
Thanks. I'm off to performing arts with my son.